In the frozen streets of Anchorage, a little girl walks through a blizzard clutching 9 crumpled dollars. She enters a biker bar and begs them to kill her drunk father before he kills her grandma. But what the bikers did next wasn't revenge. It was a miracle. A choice between rage and redemption. Because sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. He sends them on motorcycles. Before we begin, what would you do if a child begged you for salvation? The wind over Anchorage carried a sound like whispering ghosts, swirling across empty streets glazed with ice and regret. In that frozen silence, a small figure trudged through the snow, a little girl no older than 8. Her red coat torn at the sleeve, clutching the leash of a German shepherd who moved beside her like a shadow with fur. Her name was Lily Harper, a thin, pale child with tangled brown hair spilling beneath a wool cap far too big for her head. Her cheeks were raw from cold, her blue eyes dull from fear and exhaustion. Every few steps she glanced back, as if the night itself might follow her home. Beside her, Max, her 6-year-old German shepherd, strong but underfed, his fur a blend of sable and ash, his breath rising in steady clouds, head low, ears alert. The dog's right ear bore a small tear, a mark from the time he had bitten a man's hand to protect her. Lily's boots were soaked through by the time she reached the flickering neon sign of the Iron Lantern bar, its orange letters humming weakly under falling snow. She hesitated at the door. Inside were voices, laughter, the low growl of rock music mixed with the clinking of bottles. But fear drove her forward. She pushed the door open, a gust of cold air silencing the room. The warmth hit her face like smoke. Men with leather vests turned to stare. At the bar stood Jack Rourke, leader of the biker group known as the Northern Wolves. 48 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with gray streaks in his beard and a deep scar running from his left eyebrow to his temple. A reminder of a bar fight long ago that ended a friendship and began a lifetime of mistrust. His eyes, however, were steady and kind in their own rugged way, the kind that had seen too much of both violence and mercy. The music faded. Lily stood trembling, clutching 9 crumpled dollars in her mittened hands. "Mister, will you kill my dad for me?" The words broke against the quiet like glass. Jack blinked slowly, then stepped forward, lowering himself to her level. His voice was gravel mixed with sympathy. "What's your name, kid?" "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Harper." He saw the bruise on her cheek, faint finger marks running down her neck. Behind her, Max growled softly at the room, tail low, protective. "Where's your dad, Lily?" "At home," she said, voice trembling. "He's been drinking again. He hurt Grandma bad this time. She can't get up. I think he's going to kill her." She opened her fist, showing the money. "I have $9. Please make him stop." The room went deathly still. At one of the tables sat Tank, a mountain of a man with tattoos covering his arms, his beard thick and unkempt. Once a mechanic for the Marines, now he fixed bikes and occasionally fixed people the law forgot. He muttered a curse under his breath. Beside him, Doc, the club's unofficial medic, once a paramedic who lost his license after stealing morphine for his dying brother, rose slowly. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from remembering too well the smell of broken ribs and spilled blood. Jack took a deep breath. "Lily, is your grandma still breathing?" "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I ran out the back door when he hit her with the bottle. I didn't know where else to go but Max. He led me here." Max pressed against her leg as if to confirm it. Jack looked around the room. Every man there had the same expression: anger, but also a strange tenderness. They'd all seen children like her once, in different versions of their own broken lives. "Where do you live?" Jack asked. "Blue trailer at the end of Frost Hollow Road," she whispered. 2 miles. Everyone in that bar knew the place. Cold, cheap, a pit of violence and debt. Tank slammed his beer down. "Let's go. Now." Jack raised a hand. "No." His voice carried a command born of years of leading lost men. "If we roll out like this, someone dies tonight. And not just him. We do it smart." Lily's lip quivered. "You won't help?" Jack's throat tightened. He thought of his own daughter, the one who hadn't spoken to him since he missed her 10th birthday from a prison cell. He swallowed hard. "We will help," he said softly. "But not like that." He motioned to Doc. "Check her." Doc crouched beside Lily, gentle but firm. "You hurt anywhere, sweetheart?" She shook her head. "Not bad. Just scared." He nodded, stood, and whispered to Jack, "If what she says is true, her grandma might not make it through the night." Jack clenched his jaw. "Then we ride." The men rose without another word, leather creaking, chains clinking. Outside, snow fell harder, wind howling across the empty lots. 15 engines roared to life, a thunderous growl that echoed through Anchorage's sleeping streets. Jack placed Lily and Max in his sidecar. "Hold tight, kid. You're with us now." As they rode through the storm, Lily buried her face in Max's fur. She could feel his heartbeat steady against her hands. Jack led the convoy, his mind a storm of its own, half fury, half dread. The image of that small bruise on Lily's neck burned behind his eyes. He had been that kind of man once, before prison, before remorse. The thought made him sick. They reached Frost Hollow Road, where the snow was deep and the lights dim. From the trailer came faint yelling, a crash, and then silence. Max barked once, sharp and urgent. Jack signaled to stop. Tank and 2 others spread out toward the sides. Jack stepped through the doorway first. Inside, the smell of alcohol and blood hung thick. A frail woman, Lily's grandmother, lay motionless beside an overturned chair, her gray hair matted with red. A man stood over her, swaying, bottle in hand. He was in his late 30s, unshaven, wearing a torn flannel, his eyes glassy with rage and whiskey. "Who the hell are you?" he slurred. Jack didn't answer. He moved faster than the man could react, twisting his wrist and sending the bottle shattering to the floor. Tank pinned him against the wall. The man struggled, shouting curses, until Doc pushed past them toward the woman. "She's breathing," Doc said, relief in his tone. "Barely. We need an ambulance." Jack looked at the broken figure on the ground, then at Lily standing in the doorway clutching Max. She stared at her father. No tears left, just emptiness. Outside, sirens wailed through the storm, growing louder. Jack turned to Tank. "We stay until she's safe. No one touches the kid." When police lights flashed across the walls, Jack felt that old instinct to run, but he didn't. Not this time. Lily's small hand reached for his jacket. "You really came," she whispered. Jack nodded. "Yeah, kid. We came." As the officers took the man away, Lily knelt beside her grandmother. Max lay down next to her, resting his head on the old woman's chest, waiting for a heartbeat that finally came. That night, under the howling storm, a group of bikers who once lived by rage found themselves kneeling in a broken home. Not as killers, but as protectors. Snow still fell over Anchorage like powdered ash. muting the sirens that flashed red and blue across Frost Hollow Road. The small trailer stood broken, one wall cracked from a thrown chair, its door hanging off the hinge. Inside, the air reeked of alcohol, sweat, and fear. Jack Rourke stood by the window, his breath fogging in the cold, watching two officers drag Lily's father toward a cruiser. He had seen that look before, the wild, half-empty eyes of a man drowning in his own rage. Once, those same eyes had stared back at him from a mirror 20 years ago. Doc knelt beside Lily's grandmother, carefully wrapping gauze around her head. "She's stable now," he said quietly. "But she needs a hospital." His hands, though practiced, trembled with the old tremor that came after every rescue, an echo of the patience he couldn't save back when he wore a real badge. Lily sat beside Max on the floor, her small fingers buried in the dog's fur. The German shepherd's chest rose and fell slowly, his amber eyes fixed on every movement in the room. Outside, the wind howled like a grieving spirit, shaking the trailer walls. Jack crouched beside Lily. "You did the right thing coming to us," he said. "You're safe now." She looked up, voice barely audible. "Are you going to jail too?" Jack almost smiled. "Not tonight, kid." The door burst open and Sheriff Dean Callahan stepped inside. He was in his early 50s, tall, with a weathered face carved by the Alaskan cold. His uniform was crisp despite the storm, and his presence carried the weight of a man who'd buried too many friends in this town. He had known Jack once, back when Jack wore a badge, before his temper cost him everything. Callahan's blue eyes met Jack's, cold, but not without respect. "Rourke," he said flatly, "you really know how to pick your nights." Jack stood, towering over the sheriff but lowering his tone. "She came to us. I wasn't going to turn her away." Callahan sighed. "You can't keep getting involved in things that ain't yours. You walk into crime scenes, I've got to explain to the city why I didn't arrest you." Doc looked up from his patient. "Then arrest us later, Sheriff. The kid's grandmother needs an ambulance now." Callahan's jaw tightened. He spoke into his radio, summoning paramedics. As they worked, one of the younger deputies, a tall, thin man named Officer Bryant, fresh out of academy with nervous eyes, stood near the doorway, hand on his weapon, unsure if he should fear or thank the bikers. He had grown up hearing stories about the northern wolves, about the fights, the raids, the loyalty that sometimes looked like war. Tonight, they didn't seem like the villains he'd imagined. When the stretcher arrived, Lily's grandmother was carried out into the snow. Lily clutched Max and tried to follow, but Callahan stopped her gently. "She'll be taken care of, sweetheart," he said, his voice softening. "We'll take you somewhere safe for now." Jack stepped between them. "She's not going anywhere without me." "Jack," Callahan warned, "you don't get to decide that." At that moment, headlights cut through the storm, a black pickup pulling into the lot. From it stepped Emily Rourke, Jack's wife. She was in her early 40s, tall and composed, her long auburn hair tied back in a loose braid. Her green hospital scrubs were hidden under a thick parka dusted with snow. She had the calm authority of someone who had spent years saving lives, and the quiet fire of a woman who once believed she could save her husband, too. She walked straight up to Callahan. "I'm certified under state law as an emergency foster guardian. This girl will come with me tonight," she said, pulling out her ID. Callahan raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to get involved in this, Emily? It's messy." "I work in a trauma ward," she said evenly. "Everything's messy." Jack looked at her with something between gratitude and guilt. They hadn't spoken properly in weeks, but she had come anyway. Lily clung to Max as Emily knelt down to her level. "Hey there," she said gently. "My name's Emily. You and Max can stay with me for a while. Somewhere warm. No more shouting, I promise." The girl's lip trembled. "Can Grandma come too?" Emily hesitated. "She's going to a hospital first, but we'll visit her soon." Outside, the bikers stood by their motorcycles, engines idling in the snow. Tank smoked silently, watching the flashing lights, his massive shoulders hunched against the cold. He muttered to Jack as they loaded Lily into Emily's truck. "She's a tough one, that kid. Reminds me of you when you still gave a damn." Jack exhaled a cloud of smoke. "Yeah, that's the problem." Before they left, Callahan approached Jack again. "You did the right thing tonight," he said quietly. "But don't mistake it for forgiveness." "I'm not asking for it," Jack replied. "I'm just trying to balance the scales." The sheriff nodded once and turned away. The storm swallowed the sound of the cruiser doors closing. On the ride back to the Rourke home, Emily drove carefully through the whiteout. Lily sat in the back seat with Max's head resting on her lap. She stroked his fur slowly, her eyelids heavy from exhaustion. "Will he come for us?" she asked suddenly. Emily glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Your father?" Lily nodded. Jack, sitting in the passenger seat, answered before Emily could. "Not if I can help it." They arrived at a small house on the outskirts of Anchorage, surrounded by pine trees heavy with snow. The porch light glowed amber against the storm. Inside, the warmth smelled of coffee and cedarwood. Emily led Lily upstairs to a guest room with a quilt-covered bed. Max leapt onto the rug and circled twice before lying down, eyes alert even in rest. Emily brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "You're safe now," she whispered. Lily nodded but didn't speak. When Emily left, she turned toward Max. "Do you think Grandma's okay?" The dog's tail thumped once in reply, a steady rhythm of faith. Downstairs, Jack sat at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. His knuckles were raw from the fight. Emily poured coffee into 2 mugs and placed one in front of him. "You shouldn't have gone there," she said quietly. He didn't look up. "She came to us, Em. What was I supposed to do? Turn her away like everyone else?" Emily sighed. "You never learned where to draw the line, Jack. That's what scares me." He finally met her gaze. "It's what saved them tonight." For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm beat against the windows, and in the distance, the faint sound of a siren faded into the white. Upstairs, Lily finally fell asleep with her hand buried in Max's fur. The dog watched the window until the snow light dimmed and only silence remained. For the first time in years, he didn't have to guard against shouting, only dreams. That night, the northern wolves had broken the law. But maybe, just maybe, they had mended something greater than it. Morning in Anchorage came pale and cold, the kind of gray light that made everything look older and quieter than it was. The storm had finally broken, leaving the world wrapped in a thin frost that glittered like glass. In the Rourke house, the silence was soft but uneasy, broken only by the faint ticking of the kitchen clock and the slow breathing of a sleeping dog. Lily awoke first. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The warmth, the wooden walls, the smell of coffee drifting from below. It all felt strange. Then Max lifted his head from the rug and nudged her hand, reminding her this wasn't a dream. She smiled faintly, touching the small scar on his ear. "We made it, boy," she whispered. The German shepherd stretched, his tail thumping once against the floor before settling beside her again. Downstairs, Emily Rourke stood by the window with a mug of coffee. Her auburn hair was messy, eyes rimmed red from a sleepless night. Across the table sat Jack, unshaven, tired, staring at a newspaper without reading it. He had stayed up most of the night, watching the door, half expecting someone, police or worse, to come knocking. His leather jacket hung by the chair, the scent of motor oil and snow still clinging to it. Emily spoke first. "She's still asleep?" "Yeah," Jack said. "Max is guarding her like a soldier." A faint smile touched Emily's lips. "Dogs are better judges of people than we are." Jack didn't argue. He looked toward the stairs where faint footsteps echoed. Lily appeared, small and cautious, her hair tangled, wearing one of Emily's old sweaters that reached her knees. Emily crouched to meet her. "Morning, sweetheart. Hungry?" Lily nodded. Emily handed her a plate of pancakes, steam rising in the chill air. "Eat all you can. You need strength." Jack sat across the table, trying to soften his rough tone. "You sleep okay?" Lily's eyes flicked up, unsure if she was allowed to answer. "Yes, sir," she murmured. "Call me Jack," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. Max lay by her feet, his head resting on his paws, watching everyone with quiet alertness. The peace was broken by a knock on the door, 3 sharp raps that carried authority. Emily stiffened. Jack's jaw tightened. He opened the door to find Detective Mara Klein standing there. She was in her late 30s, tall and lean, with sharp gray eyes and dark hair pulled into a tight bun. Her black trench coat was dusted with frost, and she carried herself with the precise control of someone who'd spent her whole career walking the line between empathy and suspicion. "Morning, Jack," she said. "Sheriff Callahan sent me." Jack stepped aside. "You want coffee, Mara?" "Depends," she replied, stepping inside, "on whether you're going to make this easy or not." She turned to Emily and Lily, her gaze softening briefly. "You must be Lily. I'm Detective Klein. I'm here to make sure you're safe." Lily's hand tightened around Max's fur. The dog growled low, sensing tension. Mara crouched slightly, holding out her hand. "Hey, easy there, soldier. I've met dogs like you before, smart ones." Max sniffed, then relaxed slightly, recognizing no threat. Jack folded his arms. "So what's the story?" Mara opened her notebook. "Your friend Callahan's trying to keep this quiet, but the guy you put down last night, Lily's father, he's alive. Broken ribs, concussion, blood alcohol over the roof. He's already talking about suing the department. Says you assaulted him before the cops arrived." Jack's expression hardened. "You believe that?" "I believe he's a drunk with a record and a mean streak. But I also believe in evidence," Mara said. "Callahan's doing what he can, but the DA wants the official story. You were on the scene before the police. That makes you a problem." Emily crossed her arms. "He saved a child's life." Mara sighed. "I know. But Anchorage isn't built on happy endings. Paperwork's colder than snow." She turned to Lily. "I need to ask you some questions, sweetheart, about what happened before you left the house. Can you tell me what you saw?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "He was shouting at Grandma again. Then he hit her. She fell. Max tried to bite him. I ran out." Mara nodded. "You did good. You were brave." Jack leaned against the wall, arms crossed, fighting the old anger rising in his chest. "If the DA tries to pull me in, tell Callahan he can—" Mara cut him off with a raised hand. "Relax, Rourke. I'm not here to throw cuffs on you. Not yet. I'm here to keep the kid off the system until this mess is settled. But someone out there's talking. Your names are starting to circulate. Jack frowned. What do you mean? There's word around the old trailer park, Mara said. Your good deed didn't go unnoticed. The father's drinking buddies aren't happy. The kind who carry more guns than brains. Emily's eyes widened slightly. You mean they're coming here? Not yet, Mara said. But be ready. I'll keep a cruiser nearby for the night. When she left, the air inside felt heavier. Lily pressed closer to Max, whispering into his ear. He won't find us, right? The dog lifted his head, staring toward the window, tail twitching. That night, Jack sat in the garage tuning his bike, hands blackened with oil. Tank arrived, stomping snow from his boots, his massive figure filling the doorway. Heard about the visit, Tank said. You think she's right? Jack nodded. Drunks with grudges never stay quiet. Tank grinned humorlessly. Then we don't either. He dropped a bundle of cash on the table. The boys put this together for the grandma's medical bills. Jack looked up, surprised. They didn't have to. Tank shrugged. Neither did you. Upstairs, Emily helped Lily write a letter to her grandmother. The girl's handwriting was shaky, the paper smudged with tears. She ended with one line. Max says we'll be okay. Before bed, Jack checked every window, every lock. The night outside was still, but he could feel the storm waiting beyond the silence, the kind that didn't come from the sky. At 2 a.m, Max lifted his head, ears pricking toward the road. From far away came the low growl of an engine, one that didn't belong to any of the wolves. The danger hadn't passed. It had only begun to circle. The wind outside carried the growl of engines long before headlights broke through the pines. It was just past midnight, and the world outside the Rourke house was buried under a sheet of quiet snow. Inside, every lamp was off except the faint amber glow from the fireplace. Jack sat in the living room, cleaning his old revolver, the one he swore he'd never use again. The gun wasn't loaded, at least not yet. His eyes were shadowed, his knuckles pale, every breath measured like a man trying to keep the darkness inside from breaking loose. Max lay near the door, head raised, ears forward, eyes locked on the window. His fur bristled. He knew before anyone else that trouble was coming. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, her auburn hair unbound, robe drawn tight around her. You feel it too? She asked quietly. Jack didn't look up. Engines, 3 of them, coming slow. She frowned. Police? He shook his head. No sirens. Upstairs, Lily stirred in her sleep. She dreamt of glass shattering and a woman's voice calling her name through the storm. Max gave a low, warning growl. Jack stood and checked the window. 3 figures on motorcycles crept along the road. Lights dimmed, exhaust steaming into the cold night. He opened the door slightly, the cold slicing into the house. Tank, he muttered. His voice into the radio was barely a whisper. Visitors, Frost Hollow types. On my way, Tank's gravelly voice replied. Minutes later, the unmistakable rumble of Harley engines echoed from the distance. The wolves were rolling out. Outside, the intruders stopped near the gate. Jack could make out their faces under the porch light. Rough men in their 30s, pale from cold, leather jackets patched with logos that weren't local. One of them, tall and bony with hollow cheeks, stepped forward. His name was Derek Mills, known as Skinny D. He had greasy blonde hair, missing teeth, and a stare that carried both cowardice and cruelty. He had grown up in the same trailer park as Lily's father and had followed him into every bad habit possible. "Jack Rourke!" Derek shouted. "We just want to talk." Jack's voice was flat. You've got 2 minutes before the snow buries your tracks. The second man, heavier and meaner looking, stepped forward. Kyle Reese, known as Mud, had a thick beard crusted with ice and eyes that darted like a cornered animal. You took our friend's kid. You beat him half to death. That don't sit right. Jack smiled grimly. Your friend beats old women. That don't sit right either. The third rider stayed on his bike, quiet, his face hidden behind a scarf. He was the kind of man who didn't talk until it was time to shoot. Emily whispered from behind him, Callahan won't get here in time. Jack replied, he doesn't need to. Wolves run in packs. Right on cue, the distant roar of bikes filled the air. Tank's headlights appeared first, followed by 4 others, Doc among them, bundled in his heavy parka, his weathered face determined. They parked in a half-circle behind Jack, engines idling like a wall of thunder. Derek spat into the snow. You think you scare us, old man? Tank stepped forward, towering over him. No, we don't scare you, but we end things faster than you start them. For a moment, silence. Then a flicker of movement. The man on the third bike reached into his coat. Max barked once, a sharp warning, and Jack fired a single shot into the ground between them. Don't, he said quietly. Not in front of a child. The crack of the gun broke the stillness. The intruders froze. Derek's sneer faltered. You're gonna regret this. He backed toward his bike. This ain't over. Jack holstered his weapon. It is if you keep riding. They left, tires kicking snow into the air. The wolves stood watching until the sound of engines faded down the hill. Emily exhaled shakily. They'll come back. Jack nodded. Probably with more. Tank looked at him. Then we'll be waiting. Later, after everyone left, Emily found Jack in the garage, sitting on the cold floor, staring at the revolver again. You almost shot him, she said softly. I would have, he admitted. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have hesitated. She knelt beside him. But you did hesitate. That's what matters. He rubbed his face. I just keep thinking, that girl saw too much already. If I pull that trigger, I become everything I swore I'd never be. Emily touched his shoulder. You saved her tonight without killing anyone. That's a start. Upstairs, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the snow fall under the moonlight. Max sat beside her, his eyes glowing faintly amber in the dark. Do you think they'll come back? She whispered. Max let out a soft whine and nudged her hand, as if to say he wouldn't let it happen. In that small house, surrounded by silence and frost, a fragile kind of peace returned. But beneath it all, Jack knew what storms left behind. Ashes under the snow, waiting for wind to uncover them again. The next morning, Detective Mara Klein returned, her dark hair glistening with snowflakes. You had visitors? She said dryly. Neighbors called it in. Jack said nothing. Next time, call me before you pull your gun, Mara added. He smirked. Next time, I'll try. She looked at him for a long moment. You think this ends with a few thugs running scared? The DA's still after you, and word is the father's out on bail by next week. Jack's face hardened. Then we'll be ready. Mara nodded, then glanced toward the stairs. Lily stood there quietly, holding Max's collar. The detective's expression softened. You've got good people watching out for you, kid. Don't lose that. As she left, Jack turned to Emily. It's starting all over, again. Emily whispered, Then we finish it right this time. Outside, the snow began to fall again, slow, silent and endless, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath before the next storm. Dawn broke gray and brittle over Anchorage, the kind of morning that promised more storms. Frost clung to the windows of the Rourke house, and the air inside was heavy with silence. Jack sat at the table with a cigarette burning low between his fingers, the smoke curling toward the ceiling like a prayer he didn't believe in anymore. Emily moved quietly, making coffee, her movements mechanical, her eyes rimmed red from another sleepless night. Max lay by the door, restless, his ears twitching at every sound from the road. Upstairs, Lily sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her knees. Her dreams had been filled with footsteps, shouts, and broken glass. But what woke her wasn't a nightmare. It was the way Max suddenly lifted his head, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Jack noticed it too. "Something's off," he muttered. Before he could stand, the doorbell rang. Not once, 3 times, firm, deliberate. Emily froze. "That's him," she whispered. Jack opened the door slowly, hand on his revolver. But instead of Lily's father, it was Sheriff Dean Callahan, standing there in his heavy brown coat, the snow melting off his boots. His expression was grave, his hat tucked under one arm. "Morning, Jack," he said quietly. "You'd better sit down." Emily's face went pale. What happened? Callahan sighed, pulling out a folder. "We released Harper on bail last night. He signed his papers, made his call, and disappeared. He never showed up at his sister's place. We found his truck burned outside of town at daybreak. Blood in the snow. Not his." Jack's jaw tightened. "He's hunting them." Callahan nodded. "We think so. There's more. He's got help. The same 2 idiots you scared off last week. They're armed and desperate." Lily had come down the stairs quietly, her small figure framed in the dim light. "He's coming here, isn't he?" she asked softly. Callahan hesitated, then crouched down to her level. "We're not going to let that happen, sweetheart." Max barked once, sharp and certain, as if to agree. Jack turned to Emily. "Get her ready. We're leaving Anchorage." Emily frowned. "Where?" Jack looked at Callahan. "The old ranger cabin up north, my father's place. No one's used it since the fire." The sheriff hesitated. "It's remote. No cell service." "That's the point," Jack said. By noon, the northern wolves were gathered outside the Rourke house. Tank, Doc, and 2 others, Ray Delgado and Bishop Kane. Ray was the youngest of them, late 20s, clean-shaven with sharp eyes and a constant nervous energy. He'd once been a firefighter before an injury forced him out. Now he rode with the wolves for the sense of brotherhood he'd lost. Bishop, by contrast, was an older man, bald, thick with muscle, his arms covered in faded tattoos from his Navy years. He spoke little, prayed often, and carried a quiet strength that steadied the group when things went bad. They loaded supplies into the trucks: fuel, blankets, food, ammunition. Emily helped Lily into the back seat of her SUV, Max hopping in beside her. The German Shepherd rested his head on the girl's lap, eyes scanning the horizon. As they left Anchorage, snow began to fall again. Thick, wet flakes swirling like ghosts over the mountains. The convoy moved slow through the frozen roads, engines echoing across the valleys. Jack rode at the front on his Harley, the roar of the engine drowning out the thoughts in his head. Halfway to the cabin, Tank's voice crackled through the radio. "Got company, 2 miles behind. Same truck that burned out last night. Different color, but same plate." Jack's eyes narrowed. "How far?" "Close enough to smell their damn cigarettes." Emily's voice came through next. "Jack, what do we do?" He thought for a moment, then said, "We don't lead them to Lily." Tank, you and Bishop fall back. Make sure they turn the other way. Tank's grin was audible in his tone. Copy that. Snow thickened, the world turning to white. The convoy split, Jack and Emily pressing north, Tank and Bishop veering east down an old logging trail. 10 minutes later, the sound of gunfire cracked through the trees. Emily flinched. Lily buried her face in Max's fur. They'll be okay, Jack said, though his voice betrayed the weight of doubt. By the time they reached the cabin, daylight was fading. The place stood half sunk into the hillside, smoke curling from the old chimney where the wolves had arrived first and lit a fire. Lily stepped out of the car, staring at the woods stretching endlessly behind them. It's so quiet, she whispered. That's why I picked it, Jack said. Quiet means safe. But quiet also meant isolation. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and dust. Jack set his revolver on the mantel, scanning every window, every corner. Emily unpacked blankets, her movements brisk, efficient. Lily curled up by the fire with Max, who lay across her feet, eyes still alert despite the warmth. Hours passed. Outside, the storm howled like a living thing. Then came a knock, one, slow and deliberate. Jack froze. Tank's voice came from the other side. It's clear. We lost them. He opened the door to find Tank and Bishop, both covered in snow, their faces flushed from the cold. You okay? Jack asked. Yeah, Tank said. They're not coming. We left them a surprise on the trail. Trees down, old fuel can lit. Won't be chasing anyone for a while. Relief washed through the room. Emily poured coffee, hands trembling slightly. You boys are insane. Bishop smiled faintly. God looks out for fools and bikers. Lily giggled softly for the first time in days. Later that night, Jack stood outside under the stars, the air sharp with frost. Tank joined him, lighting a cigarette. Think this is over? Jack exhaled, watching the smoke drift away. No, but maybe it's changing. Kid's tough, Tank said. Reminds me of you. Jack chuckled quietly. That's what I'm afraid of. Inside, Lily wrote something in her notebook by the fire. In shaky handwriting, she scribbled, They didn't kill monsters tonight. They saved me from becoming one. Max rested his head beside her notebook, as if approving the words. Outside, snow fell heavier, blanketing the footprints that led to the cabin. For now, Anchorage was far behind them, and so were the ghosts. But storms never really end in Alaska. They just wait for spring. Sometimes miracles don't come with angels or bright lights. Sometimes they arrive on roaring engines, wrapped in leather and carrying hearts too scarred to show. That winter in Alaska, a little girl prayed for someone to save her, and God sent not saints, but men who had once been lost themselves. Through the snow and the darkness, they found redemption in the simplest act, choosing mercy over revenge and love over fear. Maybe that's what miracles truly are, moments when broken people decide to protect instead of destroy, when a wounded world still makes room for kindness. If you believe that faith still lives in unlikely places, share this story. If you believe that light can shine even through the roughest souls, leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever prayed for a miracle, don't forget to hit subscribe, because somewhere out there, someone like Lily, someone like Jack, someone like you, is still waiting for one. May God bless you and your loved ones tonight. And may He send you strength in the storm, just as He did for them.